Hello everyone. Today is July. It's what? July 15th. Today is July 15th, Saturday morning. I am making this video because of the requests given to me by my friends Devashish Chatterjee and Vinat Chakraborty, who wanted to be part of yesterday's Poetry of All Seasons held at KCC, but because they were not going to be, and I was the keynote speaker yesterday and I would be speaking on poetry as performance, so they requested me to post something online, and I tend to take the requests of friends very, very seriously. And I even got dressed up for the occasion, which is something I rarely do. So poetry as performance, Ipshita had asked me to say a little bit about the overarching title, which is Poetry for All Seasons. So the way I see it, poetry is a primal force. It's as primal as, say, the winds and the tides, the currents in the ocean, volcanic powers under the earth. And for all seasons, it engages with the human heart, with romantic passion, bereavement, responses to nature, nationalism, childhood, and various other things that I am not referring to right now. For instance, we have Gray's Elegy in a Country Churchyard. Then we have Shelley's To a Skylark, To a Bird. That's response to nature. I will share an amusing anecdote before I start. That is, once in my previous college, Bashanti Devi College, I had been discussing Shelley's To a Skylark with someone. And another faculty person who was not from the humanities, he said, "Akashe ekta pakhi gan korche, ei niye eto kotha bolar ki ache?" So that, I suppose, is, it's how we perceive, how we respond, our sensibilities. So going back to the topic, poetry as performance, I did a little bit of thinking before I went to deliver the lecture yesterday. What struck me was that if I were to go back to the earliest beginnings of poetry as performance, then I would see it in oral traditions, in oral narrative traditions, the epic, the Mahakavya, storytelling. I mean, Homer was telling a story. And why the need to speak about a battle? Because it was not just the battle, it was people, there were gods, there were very actions, there were many actions. And actions always interest other people. So Aristotle's famous definition for tragedy is that it is the imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. So if I really have to cut it down to its essentials, then we are interested in seeing people like us. I mean, that immediately creates a sense of identification with those characters, and we kind of ride along with them. And yes, leading to the famous Fear and Pity, classical responses to tragedy. But this is not about tragedy, although, I mean, in his Poetics, Aristotle speaks first of epic poetry and then of tragedy. So going back to poetry as performance, it would be, the earliest beginnings could be seen to lie in oral poetic traditions, and therefore narrative traditions, and the use of memory and recall, because it was all I mean, the entire story was contained in the rhapsode's mind or brain. The rhapsode, rhapsode, that was the name that was given to the one who told the story. And there's a reference to a rhapsode, ion, I-O-N, in one of Plato's dialogues. So what did the rhapsode do? You see, the epic contains both mimesis and diegesis. So mimesis is imitation and diegesis is narration. So the rhapsode would narrate like, this is what happened, that is what happened, Achilles did that and Hector did that and so on. But at the same time, he would also, as Eliot says or writes in The Wasteland, do then voices, which is one man, it was always a man at that time, one man would do many parts. Just like you have Shauli Mitro in Nathaboti Anathbod, where she plays the role of Draupadi, Dushashan, and various other characters, Duryodhana, various other characters, because she is imbibing the tradition of the kathak. More on that. So, if I were to now bring this tradition of oral narration, poetry as performance, poetry as oral narration, poetry as using oral leitmotifs, formulaic, like for instance, Dasharather Bhatta Ram. And this is done to keep a certain continuity going, to help the narrator remember cues. Those are certain cues, those formulaic utterances. So if we come to our Indian traditions, then in the Middle Ages, after the decline of Sanskrit drama, which was extremely elitist, the Prakrit languages did not have a script to support drama. So the dramatic traditions are continued first by the figure of the charon. The charon knew the epics. It's always been the epics that have been vastly popular within our folk traditions. It's the epics that has kept Indian culture together, very honestly. So the charon, who would go from village to village, reciting parts of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and he also knew religious exegesis. He would explain spiritual ideas and so on. And then his act became a little more complex with the introduction of the noti figure, the woman who danced. As he spoke, she danced. So variations of the charon noti figures became the harikatha artist of North India. And in Bengal, we have the kathak. Sri Chaitanya Dev also acted. He played the role of Rukmini, I think, in Rukmini Horeen. I could be wrong about. I know the play was Rukmini Horeen, but I'm not so sure that he played the role of Rukmini. And you know about his Shankirtan and the dancing and the singing and so on. So poetry, the kathak, and Muralidhar Banerjee's father was a kathak. So the kathak had anklets, ghumur, and he would dance and he would sing and he would recite from the Bhagavad Puran or the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And so there was religious exegesis, there was epic narration, and this engaging with the collectivity, because performance necessarily means an audience, engaging with an audience. So I would like to give a brilliant example from Rabindranath Tagore, a song that many love, Krishnakoli, ami taarei boli. So just look at how this particular song, supposed to be a kirtan, in the genre of the kirtan, how it operates. Krishnakoli ami taarei boli, কালো তারে বলে গাঁয়ের লোক, মেঘলা দিনে দেখেছিলেন তারে, কালো মেঘ কালো হরিণ চোখ। ঘোমটা মাথায় ছিল না তার মোটে, মুক্ত বেনি পিঠের পরে ওঠে। কালো, তা সে যতই কালো হোক, দেখেছি তার কালো হরিণ চোখ। So you see, the person who is narrating about Krishnakoli asks this question, Kalo, and then provides the answer himself, Tashe jotoi kalo hok, dekhechi tar kalo horin chokh. So you can see this is a combination of abhinaya. It's a dialogue. And even if the dialogue is with himself, Kalo, tashe jotoi kalo hok, dekhechi tar kalo horin chokh. So abhinaya with narration. Now I'd like to come to my next point. That is poetry as performance. Poetry as intrinsically linked to pleasure. In chapter 4 of the Biographia Literaria, Coleridge states that the object of a poem is to create pleasure, not knowledge. When I first read that as an MA student, I wondered whether Coleridge was in his right mind or not. Because for me, knowledge has always been very important. I mean, the humanities is about knowledge, but no. It's about pleasure. Maybe not so much sukh, but ananda. That the object of a poem is not knowledge, but pleasure. Knowledge is provided by science, which is discursive. Its immediate object is knowledge. So this pleasure component, if I were to take it to poetry and poetry as performance, then it would reside in sound, dhwani. Rabindranath has this inimitable song set to rag purvi, ki dhwani baje, gohono chetona maje. Walter J. Ong, in Orality and Literacy, he writes that sound is anterior to sight, that we hear sound in our mother's womb much earlier to actually seeing things. So sound is that important. So the Indian aesthetician Anandavardhan in the 9th century, he speaks about dhwani and how important dhwani is. And earlier to him, Bhatta Nayaka, commenting on the Natyashastra, commenting on Rasa, says that Rasa is primarily caused by poetry, but there are many operations of language in poetry. For instance, say Ami Rupe Tomai Bholabona. This is a song that Bengalis would recognize right away. So, Ami Rupe Tomai Bholabona, Bhalobashai Bholabo, Hath diye dar khulbo na go, গান দিয়ে দ্বার খোলাবো, ভরাবো না ভূষণ ভারে, সাজাবো না ফুলের হারে, প্রেমকে আমার মালা করে গলায় তোমার দোলাবো. And then the next part, জানবে না কেউ কোন তুফানে, তরঙ্গ দল নাচবে প্রাণে, চাঁদের মতন অলোক টানে, জোয়ারে ঢেউ. So, yes, the image is powerful, but there's also very powerful sound universe. Chander moton olok tane, juare dheu tula. So, Anandavardhan says suggestive language, suggestive dhwani. So, for this, to illustrate this point, I would like to go to Rabindranath's song, Ami Kan Pete. আমি কান পেতে রই, ও আমার আপন হৃদয় গহন দ্বারে বারে বারে. And then the next part, কে সে মোর কে বা জানে, কিছু তার দেখিয়া ভাব, কিছু পায় অনুমানে, কিছু তার বুঝি না পাব. We do not understand everything. No, it's not perfectly clear. It's not discursive. It's not a plus b whole square is equal to a square plus b square plus 2ab. It's not. It operates at the world of suggestion. Kichu pai onumane, মাঝে মাঝে তার বারুতা আমার ভাষায় পায় কি কথা রে, ও সে আমায় জানি পাঠায় বাণী, গানের তানে লুকিয়ে তারে বারে বারে. So suggestive language. For instance, sare gama pa tha mi. Can anyone definitely say what ni means? I know that these sounds correspond to animal cries, and forgetting right now which animal cry ni corresponds to. But can anyone say yes, ni means that? So that is why music is the most abstract and the most suggestive of all the arts. Therefore, the most profound, the most sublime, the most inaccessible in a certain kind of way. I mean, to one song or to one tune, 50 people could have 50 different interpretations, but you cannot have 50 interpretations to A plus B whole square. So, therefore, poetry and pleasure. The pleasure lies in dhwani or sound and in suggestive sound. I'll come to my next point, which is poetry and meter. Tal chhara kono golpo nei. Just think, say the sitar or the sarod, or even vocal music, those bandishes that they play. I mean, without tal, without meter, it really would lose a lot of its rasa. So even in poetry, tal or meter is intensely important. Although there are songs, Rabindranath Megher Pore Megh Teke Shudhu Tomar Bani Noy Go. These are songs that are without meter. They are Mir Pradhan songs, a lot of glee song. But meter is very important. So Homer also wrote in the Homeric hexameter, which is 2 long syllables followed by 1 short syllable. And the iambic pentameter is blank verse, in which Shakespeare wrote. It's like the human speaking voice. You will not, the meter is very, how should I say it? The meter is very unobtrusive. So when Macbeth, towards the end of his life, he's in his 50s, he has no wife, he has no children, his heart is empty. Hearth, H-E-A-R-T-H, hearth is empty. And because he murdered time by killing Duncan, he murdered both time and space. Therefore, he lived in a world where one day was not different from another. Hence, this incredible soliloquy. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle! Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So if you follow it, you will see that it is the pentameter, one unstressed and one stressed slow. So I would like to conclude by referring to once. I wish I could sing these songs. There was a time when I could, but I'm not going to be that bold. And I will just read from page 522 of the Gitopitan. It is a famous song set to rag Bibhash. Bashanti Bhuvana Mohini, and legend has it that it is the Meenakshi Vandana, which was sung by the famous South Indian singer Savitri at Vishwabharati at Shantiniketan, and it's most likely composed in 1931 or around that time. It starts without rhythm, বাসন্তেহে ভুবন মোহিনী দিক প্রান্তে বনবনান্তে শ্যাম প্রান্তরে আম্র ছায়ায় সরোবর তীরে নদী নীরে. And then it's the kaharva, which is the 4-beat. নীল আকাশে মলয় বাতাসে ব্যাপিল অনন্ত তব মাধুরী. But then, towards the end, it becomes a double kaharva. And just see, without rhythm, what would this song or poem be? মধু মধু মোদিত হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে রে নব প্রাণ উচ্ছ্বসিল আজি বিচলিত চিত উচ্ছলি উন্মাদনা ঝন ঝন চলিল মঞ্জিরে মঞ্জিরে. I could have done that better. For those of you who are interested, there are incredible versions of this song by Maya Shin, Bibha Sengupta, Shagata Lokhi Dasgupta, and probably later and in more recent times by Jyoti Chakraborty. So it is one of the most incredible songs that Rabindranath wrote. So therefore, if I have to sum up my lecture, it's just a very small lecture, it's that poetry as performance is integrally linked to pleasure, to rhythm, taal, meter, whatever you'd like to call it, and also to oral cultures and formulaic oral leitmotifs, like the same word over and over again. And it is very memory based on memory and recall. Sriti, Shruti, and definitely prior to script. Thank you.